Welcome to This Week in Hastings Headline History, where we take a look back at what was making news in Hastings, Florida over a century ago. These are stories directly out of the pages of the Hastings Herald, which was published weekly in the early 1900s. Here are the stories that were making news in the August 16, 1918 edition. Form a strong potato growers association. The farmers' mass meeting at Hastings last Saturday proved to be a big success, and many important steps were taken, which will set the pace for other farmers in the state. The first order of business was the report of the Resolutions Committee, a summation of which is as follows: that the farmers immediately organize a potato growers association under a state charter, that immediate steps be taken toward establishing a farmers' barrel factory, that the government be asked to exempt the perishable vegetables from the advanced freight rates, that the government be asked to stop the recruiting of labor from the fields for government work and assist us with their Bureau of Labor, that immediate provisions be made to protect the farmer in the quality of the fertilizers he buys, that large public scales shall immediately be installed, that all fertilizers, seed, and other commodities may be weighed on unloading. The resolutions were adopted unanimously as a whole. Oasis sold. During the week, a deal was consummated whereby R.B. Brooks became the owner of the Oasis and has taken charge. Mr. Burlington, the former owner, has not formulated any plans for the future, but is expected that he and his family will move back to Yelvington, where they formerly resided. The Oasis is one of the most popular cold drink stands and tobacco shops in town. Installing electric plant. The Hastings Drug Corporation is adding another feature to its already popular store by installing its own ice cream freezing plant. An addition has been built to the back of the store, and this will house the motor and freezing apparatus, which no doubt will be in full operation by the end of this week. James Coley, while at St. Augustine Beach Friday afternoon, made an odd discovery near the wreckage of the dredge boat Everglades, which is to be seen strewn on the beach sand. The find was a set of false teeth, and it is a matter for conjecture as to whether this might have been the property of someone lost on board the ill-fated boat. In August of 1918, America was in the midst of World War I, and many of the stories in the newspaper were related to the war and the impact it was having on the local community. Here are a few from this edition. Formed County Defense Council. When the St. Johns County Council of National Defense was organized in the rooms of the local Board of Trade Monday afternoon, one of the strongest organizations in the history of this section was perfected and its business set in motion. The St. Johns County Council of National Defense was organized here by W.R. Carter, editor of the Florida metropolis, Jacksonville, and members of the State Council who were sent here for that purpose. The men called upon to serve here were drafted into the service of their country and must serve, they being asked no questions as to whether they desired or could spare the time to take hold of this important proposition. They were notified to be at the meeting without fail and were warned that no excuses for absence would be accepted. The general purpose of the Council of National Defense, in a word, is to organize each state, county, and community for the war work of the nation, to make it possible for the government at any time to secure action in a given locality on a moment's notice, and to more effectively and thoroughly accomplish the great undertakings that the people of the United States will be forced to cope with, and cope with successfully, before the war against the world's most treacherous and resourceful enemy is won. Hastings Company best drilled in St. Johns County. Hastings went, saw, and conquered the competitive drill Wednesday night at the corner of King and Cordova Streets, St. Augustine, between picked squads of the 3 companies of the St. John's Battalion of County Guards, resulting in the medal being awarded to Company C of Hastings. All housewives who have obtained sugar on preserving permits are required to make a report to the county food administrator of the preserves they made, because the sugar permits from the merchants are going to be audited and every ounce of sugar thus apportioned accounted for. It has come to the attention of County Food Administrator F.N. Holmes that certain parties have purchased more sugar than the law allows without permit or certificate and have boasted of having done so. He declares that such cases will be vigorously prosecuted by the government authorities. County Food Administrator F.N. Holmes Monday morning received from Federal Food Administrator Braxton Beach of the District of Florida a notice by wire that all restrictions on beef had been removed, which means that there are to be no more meatless days or meals until further notice. The local draft board has received from Provost Marshal General Crowder Induction Order Number 1132, which calls into general military service 1,300 white men from the state of Florida, 20 of whom must come from St. Johns County. They will entrain during the 3-day period beginning August 26th. Under call number 1125, received by the local draft board from Captain Edward Anderson, in charge of the draft in Florida, 1,000 colored men physically qualified for general military service will be chosen from the first class under Florida's 1917 registration. 3 of these must come from St. Johns County. Lieutenant Will Walton of Palatka was recently reported as seriously wounded at the front in France. Lieutenant Walton is recovering rapidly from his injuries and will probably be sent back to the States to recuperate. Lieutenant Walton received a number of wounds, one of the most serious being caused by a piece of shell which injured the arch of one foot. It is not known yet whether he will be able to recover the normal use of his foot and be saved from a permanent limp. Patriotic bill paying. The Associated Retail Credit Men of New York City are planning to distribute this notice among charge customers. At this time, when the United States government is doing its utmost to stamp out waste wherever waste exists, it should be one of the obligations of the shopping public to pay its bills promptly. By doing so, men and women engaged in writing dunning letters and other collection work would be released for more important labor. The saving thus made would give the merchant an opportunity to invest in Liberty bonds or subscribe to the Red Cross. A Moultrie boy at the front writes, St. Johns County lad says American boys are everywhere to be seen. Mrs. DuPont of Moultrie has just received a letter from her son, Corporal Louis DuPont, who is in France with the American Expeditionary Force, being attached to the 10th Company, 3rd Motor Mechanic Regiment Air Service. He gives his impressions of the country and its customs, and his interesting letter in part is as follows. Well, for the last week or so, I have been seeing sights, things I read about in books when I was a kid. When they called this place over here the old country, they sure gave it the right name, for I do not believe that I ever saw so many old things. I have not seen any French wagons here at all. They have carts to do their hauling, and if the load is more than one can pull, they just hook another horse in front of the other until sometimes they have 3 and 4 in a line. When they are hauling things, the drivers never ride. They always walk and lead the horses. But the most comical thing is when we go to buy something and get our money changed into French money. The first time I got $1 changed, I bought some fruit from an old peddler, and he gave me small change. They have a 2-cent piece made out of copper, about the size of our $50. And when a fellow gets 20 or 30 of them in his pocket, he has a pocketful. In other words, if a fellow had that much copper over home, he would take it to a junk dealer and get a couple of dollars for it. We have been in the camp only a few days, but I think that we will like it all right, for they say it's one of the best camps over here. There is a small river that runs near the camp, and we have lots of fun swimming in it. There are so many American soldiers over here that I can hardly realize that I am out of the United States, for on the way up here, every little town that we went through, you could see more American men than French. That ends the letter. I hope you enjoyed this week's edition of Hastings Headline History. This podcast was brought to you by Presenting the Past, bringing history back to the present through historic presentations and the sale of treasures from days gone by. This episode was written and produced by me, Michelle Murillo, with the aid of vintage copies of the Hastings Herald. And to wrap up this week in Hastings Headline History, how about a tune from the time? This time we go back to 1918 and the song, I'm Always Chasing Rainbows, sung by Charles Harrison, with music by Joseph Smith and his orchestra.
At the end of the rainbow there's happiness, and to find it how often I cry. wonder if the world's to blame. I wonder if it would be me. I'm always chasing rainbows, watching clouds drifting by. My schemes are just like all my dreams, ending in the sky. Some fellows look and find the sunshine. I always look and find the rain. Some fellows make a winning sometime. I never even make a gain. Believe me, I'm always chasing rainbows, waiting to find a little bluebird in Some fellows look and find the sunshine. I always look and find the rain. Some fellows make a winning sometime. I never even make a gain. Believe me, I'm always chasing rainbows, waiting to find a little bluebird in the rain.